Hello, folks, and welcome to Rational Science, directly from Frankfurt, Germany. Today I'm going to be talking about the semicircle. But before I get into the semicircle, I want to touch upon a couple issues related to extinction. Okay, and why don't I start with this? I'm going to show you a little picture, a little movie, an old movie, and I want you to tell me what you can imagine was different from those days to the days in which we live today. And this comes from the end of the 19th century. This is from 1897. Okay, I want you to look at it and tell me what's different between what you see there and what you see today. Okay, here goes the first one. Okay, so take a good look. That was then. Okay, and the question is, if you see something, all the things that you can imagine that were different, okay, from what we have today. Okay. Now here, what comes next is 10 years later. Okay, and the same thing. The question is, what do you see that's different from what we have today? Okay, all the things that you can imagine, that you can see there that are different or that you think were different those days to our days. Okay. Nice pictures, huh? Okay, hopefully you got some ideas what was different then from what it is today. And I was focusing on one specific thing, and that's this one, that there were no traffic lights in those days. Okay, here we have from 1937, they just started putting some of these traffic lights out there. They had the traffic lights all the way from 1914. And, they put some here and there in the cities and some of the big cities, some of the big intersections, but it wasn't widespread. In fact, the lights did not become popular until after World War II. Okay, so that was like after 1945. You had all these other, they were known as semaphores on the street corners and only on the busy streets. Okay. But there were other things that were very different than today. And here's same test. Okay, I want you to look at this and tell me what you think is different from today. Let's see if you can pick up on it. Okay, here it is. This was then, in the old days. Okay, this is in the 1930s and the 40s. Okay, but here it starts. Okay, this 1900 to 1910. Okay, these are the people in those days, 1910 to 1920. Okay, even the kids. Okay. Anything come to mind that was different, obviously different from what we have today? Okay. Well, let me show you what we have today. See if you can figure out immediately what's different. This is today. Yeah. There was a time that people didn't wear face masks. Can you believe that? Yeah, I know you might think that I'm bluffing, that I'm leading you on, but no, there was a time that people did not use face masks. And so things change over time. It's like surrealistic that we'd go back and find people without face masks. Okay, some other things change. One of the biggest changes in the 20th century, related to extinction again, is this country called China. Okay, and here's what China looked like in the early century, 20th century. Okay, these are 1910s, 1920s. It was a very backward country. Okay, so it had a lot of growth potential because it was so backward. Okay. And you can see how people lived in those days. And if you compare it to today, here's what China looks like today, some of the big cities. Okay. Okay. Changed quite a bit, huh? And most of that change, in fact, happened in the last few years. What do you think of that? Big change in China, right? In fact, one of the big worries today, especially of the Western world, is this, the fact that China is growing its military. In fact, it was quite popular these days on the news because there was a meeting between the people in the West, the United States, and the people in the East, the Chinese. Okay? So there was a big talk about different things of mutual interest. Okay? And so this issue is very relevant today. China has grown quite a bit, grown quite fast. I like to say that China is the motor of the world, in a sense that it's thanks to China, a lot of countries are growing or still have growth because they sell and buy from China, so there's still economic activity. Okay, and you can see this in a trend. Here's a trend. This is the gross domestic product for China in the last 10 years. You can see how it's growing. Okay, and is this reason to be scared? Should we be worried about this, or should we celebrate it and say, hey, that's great? You know, Chinese are becoming richer. Compare that against the U.S. This is the U.S. trend. It looks like it's going in the opposite direction. Okay. In fact, it's had a couple bad years. What was it, 2007, 2008, and then 2020, that big last one there. Okay. So the United States is not doing as well as China, apparently. Okay. Again, should you be worried about that? Well, some people are. Here's an article that came out this week, and it triggered me to look at this. Okay. And that's a senator from Arkansas. His name is Tom Cotton. He's a Republican. He's a, you could say, a conservative, right-wing, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? And the title of his article was, What the U.S. Must Do to Beat China. Is this an issue we have to beat China or something, East-West versus West? Or is it maybe to work together and come up, you know, in parallel? Is there a way to stop China? That's maybe a more fundamental question. Is there a way to stop China? Okay, and here's what came out in one of the articles that followed up on this, and then this has to do with the meeting that they had in Alaska for 3 days, the Chinese with their counterparts in the U.S., the State Department versus the Ministry of Foreign Relations in China. It says the Biden administration has cast the U.S.-China relationship as what? The biggest geopolitical test of the 21st century. Okay? And lawmakers in both parties agree and are pushing the Biden administration to craft a comprehensive strategy to counter China's global rise. Is it possible to counter China's global rise, or is this inevitable? I mean, China was so far back that whatever new technology came to their hands, they could, you know, suddenly leap, the great leap forward, leap hundreds of years, you know, kind of, you know, they could jump or skip a lot of steps that other countries had to go through because they just adapted the technology, implemented it, and suddenly, you know, they're up in the air. They're much richer, they can produce more, they can sell more, they're expanding, okay? And so the question is it possible to stop China from growing, okay, economically? And another question parallel to that is, do we want to stop China from growing? Okay? One, is it possible? And the other one, is it desirable? Okay? Okay, and it's better to look at this graph. It gives us a better picture of what's going on in China. Okay, and I like this graph a little better. Okay, and it shows that China's GDP grew, but it's been coming down now for quite a few, 15 years approximately. It's coming down, okay? And especially if other countries don't grow, well, China's not going to grow either, okay? And here's the U.S. GDP projection for the next 10 years. And the question is whether these are just an extrapolation of past trends. Is this, if this is real, if this is what's going to really happen, or is this just the fact that they're extrapolating, you know, trends for the sake of it? Okay, so is this real? My guess is that this is just an extrapolation. They just, well, there's this curve and we're going to continue. You just saw the curve now. Last year, 2020, GDP went down. And now it's going to continue in that slanted curve upwards. Is that what we can expect in the next 10 years? And my guess is not for the United States or for China. Okay, I think China is also coming down in the sense that their GDP is going to, their growth rate is going to diminish as time goes by. And that means that curve is going to be asymptotic. The GDP curve, the total GDP, is going to be asymptotic. China grew because it had a lot of growth in front of it, a lot of growth potential, but that potential is not now coming to an end. There was a time China was growing at 25% in the, I think in the 1990s, 1995 and thereabouts. They were growing 25% according to some estimates. And now they're growing, if they're lucky and if they're not lying on their numbers, they're growing only like 6%. Okay, so it's come down significantly. And that's because China's already quite developed compared to what it was. The U.S. cannot grow at the same rate because the United States is almost completely developed. There's not much more that the United States can do to grow, at a rate like 25%. No way. It's already reached its limit. And now China's kind of catching up, and that worries the people in the West, partly for military reasons, but partly because of, the economic influence that China is getting in the world. Okay. I bring this up because, again, I think that China, at least for me, right, is a measure or serves as a measure of how much time we have on the clock for extinction. And it depends a lot on how much China grows. Okay? If China starts leveling off, we're all in trouble. The United States, Europe, Japan, all the advanced regions of the world are going to be in big trouble. So let's hope that China doesn't level off. But I think it's inevitable. China cannot grow at 25%. Now they're only growing at 6%. And at some point, they're going to be growing at 4, 3, 2, and down the line. And when China grows at 2%, it means Europe and the United States are growing below zero. In other words, they're going to have negative growth. Or they're going to approach zero, at least somewhere near zero. And that's going to be a problem because it's going to be layoffs and lots of upheaval. People are going to go out into the streets, burn cars, They're going to protest. There'll be lots of parades. Okay? That's the way I see it, at least. Okay. Now, a couple of gentlemen here put some comments related to the other day. I said, anyone who's got a theory of extinction, that's different than mine. Mine says that there's going to be an economic collapse. And these people say, no, there ain't. Okay, so what do they propose instead? Well, they don't propose anything instead. What they say is that, essentially, man is going to live forever. They can't see, as far as the eye can see, they cannot see how man will become extinct anytime, say, in the next century. In other words, this entire century, we're still going to be here. That's their version, I guess. Okay, and this is what they said. Okay, this is their comment. One fellow says, Bill's view of extinction. I refer the reader to the PDF below, which predicts our world population. It provides various scenarios with ranges from 2.3 billion to 36 billion with an average of blah, blah, blah. Okay, and he's talking about the year 2300. So he doesn't give me a theory of extinction. He just puts out there what he reads. This is what he believes in. Okay, and he thinks there's nothing that it's going to stop man from continuing to grow, to be alive at least for the next 2 centuries at least. Another fellow, along the same lines, says population follows a cycle linked to the sun. Okay, as the climate warms, population goes up. Yeah, it's the heat, right? Yeah. As the climate cools, as in now, right, the population goes down. Okay, and then he goes out and ranting. He says the corrupt Marxist governments have destroyed the cities and people are exiting for the country. Okay, so again, this fellow doesn't think that there's going to be an extinction event of man, right? All the animals all around us are disappearing. Our plants, most of our plants that we use, because we rebreed them, a lot of them we just grow vegetatively. In other words, they're seedless plants. Many of them today are seedless plants. A lot of them have lost their genetic diversity, but we're going to be around for the next million years, according to these folks, because they cannot imagine anything that could kill man. They cannot imagine anything that man can't do. And of course, these people have in the back of their minds that man is not part of the wild kingdom. He's not part of the animal world or the mammal world because we have brains. That's their argument. That's their entire argument. So we can think. I don't know, maybe these two fellows are an exception about thinking, but this is what they have going through their minds, that we're not human because we're something else. In other words, we're not animals. We don't belong to the animal kingdom. Where there's plants, there's rocks, and then there's mammals and other animals, and then there's humans. That's the way they see the world. They don't see us as being part of the animal kingdom. And that's why they arrive at these conclusions. They think that because man can think, he can solve all problems. And again, I keep saying that one of the problems man can't solve is having babies. I said that the other day. I'm not going to go through that again. But yeah, we cannot increase our population, even if we wanted to. Even if we wanted to, okay? The inversion of the population pyramid, human population pyramid, is irrevocable, whether we like it or not. Some people say, well, we don't want to have more children. No. You can't, even if you wanted to, okay? And there are economic reasons. The main reason is, we went from the farms to the cities. And in the cities, you have density-dependent birth rates. And because of that, we simply cannot. With all our intelligence, all our foresight, all our technology, there is nothing we can do to increase population as we were in the past, exponentially. It's going to level off. And the question is, what happens after that? Okay. Yeah, another thing we can't do anything about is aging. But a lot of people think somehow they're going to invent some technology out there that's going to make us live forever, which they don't even realize that that's not desirable either. I mean, if we live forever, that's even going to crowd out even more the young people who come behind. So that guarantees extinction if we live forever. So let's hope we don't come up with that little idea there. Okay. Here's one thing that this fellow can't, with a sun, he can't answer, and that's this curve there. If it's a sun type of issue, that the sun cycles make people reproduce children, he cannot explain that curve, which is the one we've had for the last almost 400 years. We expanded population-wise, right? Exponentially in the 19th century, early 20th century, and now we're leveling off. Okay? There's nothing we can do about that. As you can see, the green line there, it shows that our growth rate, population growth rate, is going down, and by mid-century it's probably going to be down to zero population growth, as it's called, even if things continue as normal, as they are now. Remember, these are just projections, okay? Doesn't mean that this is going to happen, just means that these are projections. More than likely, that's going to level off a lot sooner than what people think, okay? Okay. One fellow says, I have 3 children, 2, and I own 23 acres and grow my own food. I don't ask anything of society but to leave us be. Well, it ain't going to happen. I mean, once the world collapses, the global economy collapses, they're going to overrun your farm, and there won't be 911 to call, okay? So you won't be able to pick up the phone and call 911 and say, hey, all these guys are trespassing. No, it's going to be like in the old days. You're going to be... you're going to plow by day and defend whatever you plowed or whatever crops you put out there by night. Okay? So no one's going to protect you. The big problem after the whole world collapses is protection. No one will have protection. Everybody is on his own. And of course, trust your neighbor at your own risk. Some people say they're going to educate their neighbors to plant and to grow foods. They're going to show them how to do it. There's going to be no time. You're just going to have to fight off everyone who comes into your little garden, and they're going to pick the garden clean. And all you can do is defend yourself as best as you can. Someone's going to survive from that whole mess. It may not be you, but even if it's you, I don't know if you're going to survive for very long or that you're going to reproduce the race again. So yeah, it's never going to happen. Anyways, I always say that anyone who wants to challenge the theory has to do Extinction 101 before he does 102. Everybody's an expert in Extinction 102, which is human extinction. I have yet to find anyone who's an expert on Extinction 101, which is mass extinction. Okay, so tell me how the animals in the past died. My theory is straightforward. My theory says they were all economic collapses, all of them. So the economy of the dinosaurs fell apart. The economy of the synapsids, of the amphibians, when their economy fell apart, that's when they became extinct, massively extinct. What do I mean by that? I mean that, what an animal manages, they have economics as well in the animal kingdom, just like us, no different. It's that, their economy is food. And, we think ours is different, but no, ours is also food. The only reason we produce all this other unnecessary stuff is to produce food, ultimately to produce food. In other words, you produce food to live one more day, to produce more things that help you trade and help you produce more food so that you live one more day. That's how it works. So the entire animal kingdom, including mammals called humans, we all work for food, ultimately. And what happened to these animals when their food sources disappeared, that's when they disappeared. You know, after millions of years, the plants suffer their overturning of their population pyramid, and the plants go away. And when that happens, all the animals that forged their relationship with those plants for millions of years, all those families of plants and all those families of animals that fed on them, the whole thing collapses. And that's what happened at the end of the Carboniferous, the Permian and the Cretaceous and so on. And so I have a theory. I'm saying that when there is no food, you die. Now, I think that's straightforward. Doesn't mean you have to believe in it, but you should be able to understand it unless you have a mental problem. Okay? I'm saying no food, you die. Very simple. And what the so-called paleontologists have come up with in the last 200 years is nonsense. They think it's all due to catastrophes. So, hopefully you don't believe in the same catastrophes, don't put the same nonsense when you come and put a comment on this. Some people say that first one there, that there was a supernova, one of the theories out there. Another one says volcanic activity. Another one says there was a comet that hit the Earth or an asteroid. And then, others say that there was a quick climate change and that killed the animals. None of that nonsense, please. Okay. No, you got to be a little more specific. You got to show how climate change or an asteroid killed some animals and left the other ones alive. It's called selectivity. With food, you can do that. When food chain collapses, the other one continues rolling. So food, at least you can understand whether you believe in it or not. That's the type of theory we're looking for. We're looking for a theory that is foolproof, bulletproof, okay? That even man can't do anything about, because if man's human economy, artificial economy, collapses, no one produces food. And so I think that's a pretty good theory that you can at least understand, whether you believe in it or not.